They hunt with sticks. Ambassador Var's secondary eyelids twitched in disbelief. The footage looped again on the hollow screen, depicting a group of humans in what could generously be described as makeshift furs, spearing a large lumbering animal. The scene was overlaid with strategic notations from the fleet's reconnaissance AI. No energy signatures, no electronic emissions, no signs of metallurgy. The humans, by all accounts, were primitive backward, a pre-industrial species still toiling in the muck of survival. Commander Zilve of the Corone Dominion tapped his claws against the observation table. The last transmission from the probe confirmed no orbital infrastructure, no advanced communications. Either they never achieved technological ascension, or they lost it. Varl exhaled through his rided nostrils, and yet the genetic analysis suggests they are fully sapient, capable of abstraction planning cooperation. Curious, isn't it curious, was an understatement. Sapience rarely remained in such a state. Civilizations either advanced or collapsed. But these humans were thriving. Their population, despite the lack of obvious infrastructure, was massive, spread across multiple continents, seemingly unfazed by their own technological limitations. It contradicted everything the Dominion knew about species development. This simplifies things. Zilv said, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. A primitive world requires no diplomatic theater, no drawn-out negotiations. We establish control, extract resources, and introduce them to the Dominion's governance in a few cycles. They'll be compliant. Varl hesitated. He had reviewed Dominion history extensively. When a species possessed even a rudimentary understanding of metallurgy, resistance was common. A population willing to forge weapons out of iron could be stubborn, even dangerous. But these humans, they were flint-wielding hunters. Their strongest structures were little more than stacked stones and timber. It would be over in days. I want a live observation before we make a decision. VL finally said, deploy a ground team to one of their settlements. If they react as expected, we proceed. Silver gave an impatient wave of his upper limb. Unnecessary, the data speaks for itself. Varl met his gaze, and yet we are here discussing it instead of already in control of the planet. Indulge me. Commander. Minutes later, a landing craft departed from the Dominion flagship, slipping through the atmosphere with calculated precision. It touched down on the outskirts of a human settlement, a cluster of wooden huts near a river surrounded by cultivated land. A squad of Corrin warriors disembarked, their armor forms shimmering under the dull local sun. Their translator units were calibrated, their neural inhibitors ready. A few scattered humans noticed them and paused their task. No signs of alarm, just curiosity. The aliens exchanged glances. A tall human with graying hair and a scarred face stepped forward. He held a spear in one hand, its shaft polished and worn. His expression was unreadable. The lead Corrin activated the translator. We are representatives of the Corrin Dominion. Your world is now under our control. The human cocked his head. Is that? So do not resist. We are offering you the chance to integrate peacefully. The human let out a short breath, almost like amusement. He turned his head slightly and muttered something in his own tongue. The Corrin translator struggled to make sense of it. Then everything changed. The surrounding huts came alive with movement. Humans, dozens, then hundreds emerged, some carrying wooden weapons, others seemingly unarmed, but their stances were wrong. Too poised, too measured, one of the Corones took a cautious step back, adjusting his visor. Something is a sharp, concussive noise cracked through the air. The lead warrior's head snapped back, his armor splitting at the visor. He collapsed instantly. Gunfire, not crude, projectile weapons, not rudimentary black powder muskets. These were modern firearms, controlled bursts, pinpoint accuracy. The Corones barely had time to react before half their squad was on the ground, limbs twitching from precisely placed shots. The remaining soldiers scrambled for cover, activating their energy shields. The human leader sighed, lowering his rifle, the spear now revealed as a disguised barrel. He gave a slow nod as if expecting this outcome, figured this would happen sooner or later. He rolled his shoulders and shouted something in their guttural language. The response was immediate. Concealed panels in the ground slid open, revealing turrets. Distant hillsides flickered with movement, armored vehicles emerging from expertly camouflaged positions. A Coron tried to send a distress signal back to the fleet. His communicator fizzled nothing. The humans had jammed them. Zilver, watching the feed from orbit, stood frozen. His claws tapped the table once more, but this time it was not from confidence. Val leaned in, exhaling through his nostrils again. "I think we've made a mistake." The Khorne squad was pinned down the air, thick with the staccato bursts of human gunfire. They had superior armor, but the precision of the human shots was alarming. Weak points, joint gaps, visor slits. Power nodes were being targeted with near-perfect accuracy. Sylvek's mandibles tightened as he watched the chaos unfold from orbit. "This is impossible." One of his officers muttered the data. The data was wrong. Zilve interrupted. He switched the display to infrared. More heat signatures were emerging from underground bunkers, moving with tactical precision. "This isn't a primitive society. This is a deception." Varl exhaled heavily beside him. "That's not just camouflage. That's centuries of preparation." Down below, the Coron warriors regroup behind a fallen transport. Their leader, still alive, barked into his communicator fleet. "We need immediate extraction. Hostile forces are overwhelming us." Static. Zillick turned to his comms officer. "Why are they not getting through? The humans are scrambling our transmissions. Their technology. It's not just functional, it's advanced." The officer's voice was thick with unease. "They knew we'd come. They planned for this back on the surface." The human leader crouched behind a barricade, reloading his rifle with practiced ease. He spoke into a handheld device. Phase 1. Complete. No casualties. Proceeding as expected. From the surrounding hills, missile launches erupted. The first projectile struck the Dominion's forward encampment, turning metal and earth into fire. More followed. Tracking core and ships attempting low-altitude support. Explosions painted the sky in unnatural colors. "They have anti-air systems." An officer reported how there was no sign of this infrastructure. Zilvi claws dug into the metal surface of the observation table because they wanted us to think they were weak. A fresh wave of panic spread through the command deck as long-range energy pulses from the flagship suddenly vanished. The fleet's weapons, once locked on human settlements, were silent. "They've disabled our targeting systems," another officer stammered. Val turned sharply. "How localized jamming fields? It's sophisticated, more than we expected." Zilver clenched his jaw. "How long until we regain control? We don't know on the surface." The Corin squad's leader made a last attempt to retreat. He activated his emergency beacon, signaling a full distress call to any available extraction teams. The human leader noticed and gave a signal. Another squad of humans, fully armored in gear that clearly wasn't primitive, moved forward. The Coron barely had time to react before something struck his suit's power pack. Sparks erupted from his back as he staggered. The human leader crouched next to him. "You expected us to be weak." His voice was almost conversational. "That was your first mistake." He gestured to his men. "Take them alive, we have questions." Zilver slammed his fist against the table as the feed went dark. He turned to Val. "We need to retreat." Val studied the console, then met Zil's gaze. "We can't. We don't even know how deep their deception goes. They're just humans." Zilver spat. "Just humans." Val's voice was quiet but sharp. "They tricked us into thinking they were primitive. They let us believe they were easy prey, and now they're turning our own tactics against us." He gestured to the chaos below. "This isn't a battle. This is a trap." Sylvik's mandibles clenched as he watched the tactical readout. The humans had flipped the balance of power in mere minutes. The Coran fleet, once poed for domination, now faced a planet armed with technology. They hadn't detected countermeasures they hadn't prepared for, and a level of strategic foresight that defied explanation. They anticipated everything. Varl said, his voice unreadable, every protocol we'd use, every assumption we'd make. Silk claw scraped the console. We have to salvage this. He turned to his officers. Can we break their jamming field? Negative. Their interference system are adaptive. Deploy countermeasures, launch orbital strikes. They've disabled our targeting locks. Sylve's vision darkened with fury. The Karan Dominion had conquered dozens of worlds, subdued countless species. No planet had ever been this prepared. No species had ever fooled them so completely, and yet here they were trapped, humiliated and bleeding troops by the second on the surface. The captured Karan soldiers were being marched into underground structures. The human leader watched the sky with a measured gaze. He tapped his communicator fleet status. Another human standing beside an array of monitors responded. They haven't retreated yet, but they're hesitant. They're trying to regain targeting, but we've shut them out. The leader nodded. Then it's time he switched channels. All units execute final phase in orbit. The Korin flagship trembled as energy pulses erupted from the planet's surface. Ground-based weaponry, hidden for who knew how long, struck with surgical precision. Shields flickered, then collapsed under the relentless bombardment. "Sir, we're taking direct hits from the surface," an officer shouted. Sylvek's claws dug into his palm. Impossible. They shouldn't have weapons capable of this range, let alone this accuracy. "We should have left the moment we realized," Baal said. "But now we have to run." Silver, Ref refused to acknowledge defeat. "We still have superiority." The ship shuddered violently. Systems flickered. The tactical display warped as human-controlled cyber attacks breached core and firewalls. Defensive algorithms collapsed. The Dominion's technological edge was vanishing. The humans hadn't just prepared militarily, they had prepared for everything. A new signal came through an open broadcast, unencrypted. The human leader voice came through clear. "You thought we were primitives." There was no malice in his voice, only certainty. "You saw what we wanted you to see, you believed what we let you believe, and now you know the truth." Silence filled the command deck. No one spoke, no one moved. "Leave now." The human continued. "If you try to return, we'll be waiting, and next time we won't let you leave." Shavek turned to Varl, rage burning inside him, but he saw the answer in the ambassador's eyes. They had already lost. He grounded his mandibles together, then issued the order he never thought he'd have to say. "All ships retreat the Karan fleet." Once the embodiment of dominance turned away from the planet, battered and broken the humans. Victorious without ever stepping beyond their world, watch them go on the surface. The human leader lowered his communicator and turned to his second-in-command. "Think they'll be back?" Maybe, the man answered. "But if they do, they'll know exactly what's waiting for them." And so the Koran Dominion learned a lesson that no species before them had ever needed to learn: never underestimate humans. The Koran fleet limped away from the system, their shattered pride weighing heavier than their damaged halls in the silent void of space. They carried not just the scars of battle, but the knowledge that their invincible empire had been deceived, manipulated, and ultimately humiliated by a species they had underestimated. Sylvek sat in his quarters, staring at the cold glow of the navigation screen reports, streamed-in damage assessments, casualty lists, field reports from the few survivors who had managed to escape capture. Each document confirmed the truth he wished to deny. Humanity had not merely defended their planet, they had orchestrated every moment of the war. Varl entered, his expression unreadable. The High Command demands an explanation. Silver exhales slowly. They won't believe it. They will have no choice. Syl's mandibles tightened. How did we not know? How did we fail to see their strength? Varl took a seat, folding his arms, because they wanted us to see something else. They didn't just hide their technology, they made sure we saw the opposite. Every scan, every transmission, every probe we sent, each one was manipulated. They fed us false information from the beginning. Zilv turned toward the viewport where the retreating fleet drifted in a formation of silent disgrace. No empire has ever suffered this kind of defeat, because no empire has ever encountered a species like them. Silence stretched between them. They'll be watching us now, Val added. If we return, they'll be ready, more than ready. Silver nodded slowly. He had no doubt about that humanity had learned how to deceive, how to manipulate, how to control every aspect of perception, their intelligence, their resilience. It had been underestimated because it was unlike anything the Dominion had encountered. The High Command will demand retaliation. Silk muttered they will want to reclaim their pride. Var's voice was quiet. Then they will be making the same mistake we did. Silvak turned to him, studying his face. There was no doubt in his mind that humanity had already anticipated this response. Even now they were likely preparing for the day the Dominion sought revenge. And when that day came, it would not be the humans who would be caught off guard on Earth. The human leader stood on a ridge overlooking the battlefield. Smoke still rose from the craters where core and ships had fallen. But the damage to human forces had been minimal. The victory was absolute. A second in command approached. They're gone. The leader nodded for now. They'll return. Yes, and we'll be ready. He turned, looking at the underground bunkers, the hidden fleet still concealed beneath the waves, the satellite arrays monitoring Corin movements. Humanity had spent generations preparing for this encounter, and now that the illusion was shattered, they no longer needed to pretend. He glanced at the captured core, and soldiers now being escorted deeper into secure facilities. They would be studied, interrogated, and eventually released. But only after every useful piece of information had been extracted. There was no need for cruelty, only strategy. Humanity had learned long ago that war was not about battles, it was about control, and control was something they had perfected. As the sun set over the horizon, the leader's expression remained calm. The Dominion had left, but the war was far from over, and this time humanity would be the ones dictating the terms.